Hey, welcome everybody to Retail Redux. We're trying something new this week. We're going to go and simulcast, I guess would be the right word, with Instagram Live as we set up our podcast for the week. We're going to talk about all things retail. We're going to tell some stories about myself, about the industry. We're going to take some questions. We've built this one up for a week. We had to delay it because of smog. Right, the city basically shut down. The city turned orange last week with all the smoke coming out of Canada, and so we were able to build up some questions. So I have my producers on hand who will ask questions from the background, and we'll answer some of those. I'll try not to keep glancing over at them, but I will anyway. Sorry. So we'll answer those questions, and then hopefully some will come in across the live feed, and we'll take those and we'll answer them as they come. All right. What I'm going to do now is throw it over to my producer for the first question.
Yes, hi everyone. Thank you for having me. As my first question on Retail Redux, you're a diehard New Yorker. You had so many opportunities. To start with, how did you get into the industry? How did you start in real estate?
This was quite simple. As a matter of fact, when I came out of school, I thought I'd go down to Wall Street. I had no business degree, but what did I know? And I said, all right, I'm going to go to Wall Street. And back then, you needed a master's degree, as you do today, or more. And I was really just kidding myself, quite frankly, and got lucky. I had a friend working for a company. It was one of the only companies doing retail leasing. He said, hey, Cory, they need somebody who knows Manhattan. They'll pay you $250 a week to walk the streets. That's how I got into the business.
Great.
Yeah. And by the way, speaking of getting into the business, when I think about that, I think about where we are today. When I think about the interns that we just got started over the last week, I started in the summertime, reported to work in a suit and tie because that was the only way you reported to work back in the day. I met with the gentleman who I went to work for. His name is Robert Futterman, well known in our industry, and he said, good to see you, welcome aboard. He handed me a clipboard and a pen, and he said, go walk the streets. And I walked up First Avenue from about 14th Street to 96th Street, and then I walked down 2nd Avenue from 96th Street down to 14th Street in a suit and tie, hardcore shoes, and man, did I pay for it. I was soaking wet, sweating. You never knew a suit can sweat, but I sweated right through my suit. And man, did I have blisters. So I quickly learned a lesson in terms of what kind of shoes to wear. Suits and ties, you still need it. But I quickly learned a lesson about what kind of shoes to wear. What else you got for me?
That was all pre-Apple Watch.
Who? What? We didn't even know about that. That was pre-Apple Watch. That was pre-fax machine. That was pre-cell phone. That was pre-everything.
Yeah, so as you said, you started off in the business, walking the streets, getting to know the city. How did you transition into, the more business side of real estate and really get your foot in the door in your career?
It was a lot of, it was a fair amount of bumps and bruises. Everything's a grind. We all know that. We talk about it constantly. It was literally and figuratively pounding pavement. It was pounding phones. And quite frankly, it was a lucky break or two along the way, and I've spoken about this in the past after taking some bumps and bruises on the brokerage side of the business, whether that be deals falling through because I was involved in a cash / key money transaction, and payment was due on Black Monday. Well, no one knew it was Black Monday until it was Black Monday, and that deal died. So that hurt. Then there was some self-inflicted wounds. That was making some deals. I did the first Blockbuster video in Manhattan, making a whole bunch of money for anybody at any age, and then not realizing I had taxes to pay. And so, again, self-inflicted, but took some bumps and bruises. And then after you fast forward a handful of years, I got lucky. I got what I call my first lucky bounce in the business. I had a friend working with the ICSC organization at the time. They had a magazine publication. It was called Shopping Centers Today, and her job was to sell classified ads. because that's what they did back then. They didn't post them on Indeed and things like that. Man, we just talked about how old I am throughout this whole thing, right? She had sold an ad to this little company called CVS Pharmacy.
That little company.
That little company of about, I don't know, I think they're up to about 13, 14,000 stores today, only had about 1,100 back then, and they were not in the New York City metro area, and they were looking to hire somebody to be a real estate director for the 5 boroughs of New York. She gave me the inside scoop on that. I was able to meet the director, the head of real estate for CVS at the time, and subsequently landed that job. And that was, when you look at the breaks you get along the way, some are just pure dumb luck, some come with the hustle and what have you. This was one of those first breaks that I got in the business. And being at CVS at the time, and I say it this way because I know it was my conversation on my way out. I wound up being with CVS for about 3 years. And at the end of that 3-year run, they had decided to put a pause on what was next because of the 15 or so transactions we had put together. Some of them were ground up developments, and they wanted to see how those stores would perform in this marketplace. And so I was at a little bit of a stall. And again, when I walked out of there, I thanked my boss. I thanked him for what I call a master's degree in corporate retail real estate, and that's really what it was. And I think that's the most specific part of that story is the answer to your question, and that's what transitioned me into that sort of corporate retail world.
Wow. I mean, given that it was like your first jump with CVS Pharmacies, is quite the accomplishment. I'm sure you learned a lot with that. In terms of, the deals that you've been a part of, what would you say has been the most rewarding deal that you've worked with in your career?
There were a lot. This business is not made up of attaboys, and you very rarely get thanked and what have you.
Day one.
Day one, right? And so when I think about that, I'd have to say from a pure rewarding perspective, we represent Panda Express. We have been representing Panda Express since they first thought about coming to New York City, which is now coming up on 17 years ago. And we did a lot of work for them with respect to the market conditions, prices in different markets throughout the city, all 5 boroughs. And I would say, to hit your point in terms of rewarding, it took 8 years to sign the first lease. And that's not because we negotiated deals and walked away from them. It was because it was just their slow and methodical process on making a decision to come to one of the most expensive markets that they were involved with. It's turned out to be very lucrative for them, and we continue with them to this day, looking at opportunities, and we're in full throttle now in terms of new deals. But yeah, that was pretty rewarding. It was I don't want to say a sense of accomplishment per se, because you make your deals and you feel like you've accomplished something when you make those deals. But that felt pretty good.
Definitely.
And by the way, none of that, I have to say, that's not me. That's an us reward, and that's Stephanie Malloy and of course Jason Turner. That's what makes that rewarding, because it was a full-on team accomplishment.
And I feel like anyone who knows Zelnik knows, obviously you're the face of the company as you're very active on social media, but that Zelnik is very much like a family and a team-oriented group, which I think is extremely important to touch on.
Thank you, and I appreciate you bringing that up. It's true. I don't know of many. There's certainly some over the course of 17 years that we have the company, where someone's done a deal here or someone's done a deal there, but there are very few deals that are done in the organization that don't have more than one person involved.
Mm-hmm. And I think especially in the real estate industry that is notorious for being cutthroat and very singular, it's very out of the ordinary that there are multiple people working on a deal within a company. So it's very admirable. Thank you,
and I will say for sure, for certainty, because it would involve me on some level, we have not once, absolutely not once, had an internal commission split issue amongst our teammates and or partners.
It's almost unheard of.
All right, what else are they telling? What else are they asking for?
So you touched on Panda, and I know given your client roster that you are definitely your niche is within the food industry. Was Panda your first food client? Can you tell us a little bit more about that type of industry, especially in New York?
I guess Panda. Yeah, Panda was my first. It's actually my second food client. My first food client, and not many people know this, and it's just a fun fact that you made me think of right now, is I actually represented a local Chinese restaurant. I never really thought about this. It's very funny. Yes, Hop Wan Express. They have, I don't even know how many they have currently, but at one point they got up to about 6 throughout the city, and I was involved with 5 of them because the first one was how I met them on a pure cold call. I was walking, and I'll never forget this. I was walking down the street. I was with a former friend and associate of mine, Mark Finkelstein. Shout out, Mark. Hope you're happy in your retirement wherever you are. But Mark Finkelstein and I were walking up 3rd Avenue, and we found a Hop Wan Express, and we knew that we had a space available that was a former restaurant, and so it was built and ready for that. We walked in, we found the proprietor of Hop Wan Express. His name is Lawrence Eng. To this day remains a great friend of mine. And we talked to him about it. The next day we walked him through the space. The day after that we had a proposal. We negotiated a lease, and he made a deal, and he became a full-on client of mine. He didn't grow at the rapid pace that a lot of big chains do, but over the course of the next few years, we did 4 more deals, and he ended up with about 6 of them. And so that was my first taste, pardon the pun, of the food industry. But with respect to someone like Panda Express, that speaks to how this business runs in terms of relationships, and who knows who you are, who do you know, and things like that, and how you make the connections. And I'm just gonna have fun name dropping. Shout out to my great friend Bob Knackle, who says it's not who you know, it's who knows you. And so the people from Blockbuster Video, a handful of them who transitioned to Panda Express back in the day,
obvious reasons.
They knew me, and we talked about handling Panda Express, and that's what took me into that arena. And then probably 10 years later, because I've been with Panda for so long, someone from Panda slid over to get involved with a group called Smashburger, and that helped me land the Smashburger account. But with respect to food, again, and Lenwich, who's these are sort of our 3 day-to-day growing and most active tenants. Lenny, the principal, Lenny's attorney knew me. He knew I would take Lenny seriously in terms of his growth prospects, and we spent a lot of time doing a lot of work for Lenny, and we were able to roll out about 5 locations for him to get his portfolio up to about 19 stores. That included selling him a building, and it included negotiating a handful of leases.
So, you talk a lot about relationships and people shifting, and the industry shifting in general. In respects to the food industry, you got into the food industry based on relationships. What would you say would be the biggest shift in your day-to-day at the industry as a whole?
I think that what you shift with industry-wide, and I guess I can play with how you phrase that question, is one, when you look at food, just going back to your food, retail was having problems before COVID. The retail industry was having problems before COVID. COVID became like this great smokescreen for people to hide behind when it happened. But retail was having problems. And I recall sitting at a Red Meat luncheon probably about 7 or 8 years ago at this point, and I stood up in the stores committee meeting. There's about 80 or 90 of us in the room, and one of the landlords was speaking, and he's a friend of mine, and I stood up and I said, "Hey Fred, if you could vent it, you could rent it." All right? And if you look across the board, not of late, but if you look back over the last 7, 8 years, most of the deals done from a numerical, from a store count perspective, have been food related, and that was a shift in the industry in that regard. Yes, there are other things. There's the shift to MedTail, right? The City MDs, the medicines,
Yes.
the diamond braces, and people like that. Now we're sort of playing in the cannabis arena in terms of that shift. But from a with respect to a day-to-day and how you deal with the business and how you go about the business, we have become so data-driven, and putting that kind of material together is important when you're bringing on a new client, when you're pitching somebody, is that you have to be informed. And back in the day, informed was going to walk the streets, go see who the neighboring tenants are, make 3 phone calls, try to get a couple of comps and things like that. Today, it's traffic counts, it's sales counts for your competitors in the marketplace, and so much of that stuff is available to everyone in the industry. So you need to be aware of that. We're very, very, very data driven.
As a tenant, what do you think is the biggest, data-driven point that they look out for?
Well, so much of our business it depends, right? What are you looking for? Panda Express, for example, they like to be around other QSRs.
Sorry,
right?
For the average Joe like me, what is a QSR?
Right. QSR, quick service restaurant.
Got it.
Okay. Fast food is, you can't say fast food anymore, so we call them quick service restaurants. It's no waiter waitress service. It's either full-on cafeteria style, serve yourself, or you go place an order, someone may just drop it off on your table when it's ready, things like that. So I think that you look at traffic counts are huge. People want people walking by. You could look at something like the luxury goods market on Madison Avenue. They want to be next to other luxury brand retailers. That's very cohesive to what they're doing. Subways, what are the subway counts? What are the nearest subway locations? What are those counts on a day-to-day basis? Things like that. But most importantly, the density, which is usually not that big an issue when you're talking about Manhattan. You get into the outer boroughs and things like that. Those counts. Those body counts and things like that start to matter.
I mean, it's just crazy how much information is available now that we have all of these softwares that can track things, like phone service and all that kind of stuff.
It's insane, and I think that someone had written a note into us about how you come up with some of this stuff. But there's software products that will tell us, when somebody walks by that store 2 minutes ago. There's software products that tell us where people go after they buy the goods, and what's their next stop, what's their next purchase, when was the last time they were at that particular store, things like that. It's beyond. There's other data retrievers, if you will. Some of the high-end malls across the country, with lifestyle centers, malls. When they started to really get into the technology, and this goes back a little before COVID, the Simons of the world, some of the Westfields of the world, basically when you walked into their center, they grabbed not literally, but technologically, satellite, whatever it is, grabbed your phone. So they knew you were there, right? And so what would happen would be, if you walked into J. Crew, for example, and you picked up a pair of khakis, okay, you get your khakis, you pay for your khakis, all of that's going into a computer, your phone triggers something, and your phone will buzz and tell you that the Limited's running a sale on a sweater that will match your khakis.
Wow.
And that's how deep the dive has been in terms of this stuff, and I'm sure it's even more than that.
And I feel like this, drive for more information and more data on these points is very niche to the retail sector of commercial real estate, given that an office broker or even an industrial broker might not be as interested in this stuff. But as a new broker coming into the industry, you'd agree that it'd be really important to know this data and be able to present it to clients, right?
Yeah, I think that when you come into the industry, you want to hopefully have you want to have the right mentor, right? And you want to sit with someone who will not only say to you, here's Buxton, here's Regis, here's this, here's that, but takes you through it, right? Because if you come in as a newbie, not that you can't read the words on a page, so to speak, but you want to understand what it all means.
Mm-hmm.
So that takes you to another part of this world and this business about having a proper mentor and trying to track someone like that down along the way.
And I've been so lucky to have you as my mentor in this process, both professionally and personally. But for someone who is not as fortunate, what would you say would be the biggest piece of advice to someone new to the industry or trying to get their foot in the door?
I think that if there are a lot of companies, and we're included in that want to bring on people that are of youth, that are the next generation. This business looks forward to and wants that energy that most of those people bring. And there are certain qualifications you have to have, not the least of which is just pure grit and energy, and we want a part of that. But I would say that if you have the chance to step into this business, grab onto someone, whether it's myself or somebody else at that particular firm that you may join. Find a way to latch on. And if that person is not letting you latch on, they're not the person for you. See if there's somebody else. And then obviously it depends on the size of the organization. And then if nobody wants, everybody puts on an interview face, right? The candidate puts on an interview face to get the job, and the person doing the hiring puts on an interview face to bring you on board.
Pure sales.
Pure sales, right? But if that person is not who they represented themselves to be at that interview, and you're able to figure that out quickly, then get the hell out of Dodge and go find another place to do it, because you can. And the world is much more receptive to that. When I came around in the business and in life, jumping around and changing jobs, it was like a sin. Your parents said, oh no, you got to be there for a while, don't change. It's all changed. It's all changed. I'm going to take a breath for this commercial break and let you know, everybody, that if you write in some questions, we are going to send you a Zelnik hat. Please, if you have some questions, shoot them into us. We're working off our list. It's getting short, but we'd love some live questions. We got the Zelnik cap with the NYC Forever logo in the back. Please write us in.
You will not be missed with those epic orange hats. That's for sure.
I love hats.
In the streets of New York.
Hey, when we brought on the interns, okay, and I gave them each a hat. They walked out of here, and I just accidentally stood up at my desk, looked out the window, and saw them wearing their hats. And they walked up the block, and I got 2 phone calls. And I said, someone said to me, "Oh, I hear your interns are out working." I went, "What are you talking about?" I said, I saw these 2 young guys that look like they barely shave, and they're wearing your Zelnik hat. I figured they were your interns. So we're making our mark. We're not going too crazy, but we're making our mark.
One hat at a time.
One hat at a time. Very good. Any other write-ins? What do we got?
So you talked about hitting the streets, that sort of thing when you started. What was your most memorable meeting that you've had within this industry, whether it be a formal meeting or informal meeting?
I think I have a good memorable fun meeting.
Let's hear it.
Let's hear it. Right. So I'm at a Knick game, and on that particular night, sitting in front of me was Jay-Z, and we got the "Hey, how you doing?" kind of acknowledgement, whatever, and I'm not looking to bother him and all that. But at that moment in time, we were looking at a new type of deal, which we don't often do. It just so happens we were looking at a potential hotel development on Montague Street in Brooklyn. And this has to go back at this point probably 10 years. And I said to him, "Hey Jay, got a crazy one for you. We're looking," and I know he's from Brooklyn, the Marcy projects and all that stuff. And I said, "Hey, we're looking at this development on Montague Street in Brooklyn. What do you think? Up your alley? Whatever." And he goes, "That's interesting. I love Brooklyn and all that." And he was very pleasant and all that stuff. And he goes, "Give me your card." And he took my card, and on my card, he wrote me his guy's name and number. And he basically said, "Here, call John, talk to him and see what's what." And I called John the next day. I said I was with Jay. He goes, yeah, no problem. He goes, "Why don't you come up to my office next week?" And so I went up to meet his associate, John, and we talked about it. Unfortunately, nothing came about. But, it's pretty fun to say that we had that conversation.
I mean, as a diehard Jay-Z fan, it's great to know that he's as nice as you'd hope that your favorite artist would be.
Yeah, very, 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 very human.
And you're a huge Knicks fan, so anyone who follows your social knows that you are at the Garden every night that they're playing.
That's it.
Yeah. So another person on the Instagram DM'd us asking, given the market, there's a lot of smoke shops that are opening up throughout the city. There's, the guy mentioned that there's one every block. Like, how are these people able to pay their rent and stay in business?
Well, time's going to tell. Time will tell how long they all stay in business. Okay, that the whole thing, it's probably a year and change now, but it's still in its infancy. And so what happened was you had a certain type of landlord, usually, and most of them, if you look around, are in smaller buildings with spaces where a landlord was probably struggling to collect rent, okay? And these guys come in, they're not selling cannabis, right? They're coming in, it's CBD, it's those type of things, it's products, whether it's bongs and pipes and all that stuff, and all that stuff is welcome these days, and it's legal, and that's what they do. Now, what happens after that, when they open up the shop, and then they start doing things that they are allegedly not supposed to be doing, like selling marijuana and things like that? Well, I would say to you, if that's what they're doing, there's a tremendous amount of demand for it, and so some of these guys will hang around. From a pure business perspective, like I said, time will tell whether they last. From a legal perspective, and I'm not a lawyer, but I will tell you that these leases were not signed with cannabis dealers. And so the landlords didn't do wrong. They had these people coming in and they wanted to sell products related to cannabis use. They wanted to sell CBD, and all of that stuff was legal, so they signed leases with these guys. I know that the city is working hard to try to crack down on it because there is a certain amount of legal cannabis operators that are looking to open, and so we'll see what happens. But for now, and again, I don't even know that it's a fully year that some of these guys have operated. We'll see. Some of it'll weed out. It'll start to weed itself out. No pun intended. Yikes.
Nice one.
Nice one. Right?
You talked earlier about the wave of, urgent care, city MD, that type of thing. Do you think that the next wave would be this type of cannabis user, or do you think that the city should really, start being, intentional about what types of places get opened up?
No, I think we're probably in the cannabis wave now.
Okay.
We're in it. What's happening is, like a lot of things where the state is involved, it's a slow process. It takes a lot of time, and so they're approving these licenses, and supposedly they have many licensees ready to open up shops, but the state is involved with negotiating the transactions at the various locations, and
a lot of red tape.
It's red tape. It's arduous because that's how the state is notoriously, and it happens.
Got it. And in terms of waves and different types of industries, your focus has really been in the food industry. Are there any industries that, in a perfect world that you would love to just jump right into? Or, is there any, company in mind that would be like a dream company to work with?
I think there are a lot of companies out there we'd all like to be involved with. I'm not sure that I can name them all right now. But what I would say to you is that as real estate brokers, we're an opportunistic bunch, right? I don't use the broker term too often, but we are what we are. But I like to be in the real estate business. I like to be involved with a forward-thinking, solid financially solid company with growth in mind, and be a part of that. Historically, that's what I've done. I've grown with companies. Panda, we talked about. In my past life, I did Dwayne Reed drug. I did over almost 250 Dwayne Reed drugstores. So it was always pleasant. It was always fun to be a part of that growth. But you have to remember, we're an opportunistic bunch too.
Yeah.
We get paid for the deals that we transact, and so we want to be involved with companies that want to make deals.
You perfectly said it's very opportunistic business, and you have to go with the flow and go with the shifts of
Sure.
the industry. in terms of like the shifts, I feel like one of the biggest shifts, as you know, myself, I'm very new to the industry, and you know the way that I've been trained, so I've heard is very.
Well, you're a great producer. You've been producing for years. You're new to the industry, but you're producing for years.
Well, well, in terms of what I've heard from, you know, the old school way of doing things, you know, you were sort of given a phone, given a map. I mean, you don't need a map, but yeah, someone like myself would need a map, and you just had to figure it out. You know, how is the new school and like the new way that brokers are trained? How would you say that they have changed?
Well, you know, like you said, you know, we when we got our jobs, it was basically here's a desk and a phone, good luck. I think that there's a part of that that still carries through, smaller part. Today, because of information being so readily available to you on your phone, on your laptop, on your desktop, whatever, you know, people, you know, search and destroy that way. We have found we're doing it a lot here. I know other companies are doing it. We're finding customers via Instagram, social media, whatever it takes to generate business. But you still have to remember that you still have to do the cold calling. And so what you have to do is it's important to articulate to the new kid or the new person. It could be not just the new kid who comes out of college and steps into the business. It could be that person who was in the garment center and decided they want to get in the real estate business. What you have to remind them of is the fact that this is still, in the end of the day, a feel and touch business. So yes, it's great. You can go to Google Earth and you know, technologically walk up and down the street, but there's nothing that beats literally walking up and down the street. There are things that you just cannot and will not be able to see in certain spaces, and for you to look at something or read something and then articulate that to a potential customer, you have to be borderline foolish, because there's a mistake that's going to happen in there, and you can't backtrack on that. You know, you don't want to be saying you know, it's one thing to make a mistake and apologize for it. It's another thing to make a mistake out of your own laziness, and that's what you never want to do. Mm-hmm. So it's important to always have that old school, new school combination.
Yeah, and I feel like especially what you were saying in terms of time, like a lot of time has been saved. You know, tracking your CRM on different softwares, using Excel, like a lot of time has been saved.
Yeah.
Which definitely leads itself into the new school. But I feel like especially in the city like New York, being in person, you not only see and hear and feel, but you feel the energy.
Yes.
And that's like very specific to New York.
Oh, absolutely. And I got to tell you, I was talking to somebody last week, and I always say that one of the great things about our business, if you're doing it right, and you understand about being out on the streets and things like that, you know, you could be in your office all day, and you're grinding the phones and you're transacting and you're doing whatever you're doing. But there's nothing like knowing that you can get up out of your desk at 11:15 in the morning, 3:15 in the afternoon, whatever the case may be, and go out and just walk and pick a neighborhood that you haven't walked in a while. Get some fresh air, because you got to get out of the office. You need some air. The negotiations have been crazy. The cold calling's been crazy. And you could see something that will be different than the last time you were in that neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And it's a small thing, but that's productive.
Yes.
And it's always a fun, you know, sort of fun thing about our business.
So any Gen Zers who are sitting at their desk on Excel all day, if you want to make a change, come to real estate.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, so I feel like anyone who knows you knows that you are synonymous with New York. Like you're all about.
I think that's fair to say.
Yes. So you know, just some rapid fire questions.
Okay. So we're done with the write-ins now. So now you're gonna just beat me up.
Yeah, and again, let's be quick about this because I want to get you on your toes. What is your favorite neighborhood in New York?
It's hard for me not to say the Upper East Side. I've spent so much of my life there. There's so many things that I enjoy about it. I appreciate a lot of the neighborhoods in the city. I am obviously growing up here, living here, working here. I really appreciate a lot of the neighborhoods. the Whitney down in meatpacking. I love going to the Garden, obviously, over there. And Soho is always fun, always a fun place to be, and things like that. But I love the Upper East Side.
All right. And I think I might know the answer, given that you said your favorite neighborhood is the Upper East Side. But what do you think is the best park in New York?
It's got to be Central Park, right?
I agree.
I live there. I literally live there, right? I train for the marathons there.
Settle Flex.
And I run
Marathon.
Marathon Flex. Got to throw something out, right? We didn't talk about any of my surgery holding me up, but Marathon Flex. Go ahead.
All right. From there, what is your favorite restaurant?
It changes from time to time, and I always like a good steak, and I like Wolfgang's over on 54th Street. But I would say right now, Lusardi's on 2nd Avenue is pretty much it's my fave these days.
I'm gonna have to check that one out.
You got to check that one out.
Get on my belly rating.
That's it.
What is your favorite slice of pizza?
Man, since I started. Sorry about the flex, but since I started a lot of my training, I don't pizza a lot. I don't pizza a lot. But Zazzy's moved into the neighborhood not a couple weeks ago, about 2 years ago, and Zazzy's comes pretty strong.
I got their veggie slice.
Zazzy's so I like Zazzy's. They come strong.
So if you're not more of a pizza guy, what do you think is the best coffee shop? What's your go-to?
My go-to coffee shop? Who goes to a coffee shop anymore?
I'm Hungry Ghost in the West Village. I'm going to throw that one in there.
I make so much of my own coffee. Okay, little flex. I get up early, so I got to make my own coffee.
You're up before they're open. I'm
up before they're open. I literally am up before I'm up before they open. But Gregory's has some good coffee. A lot of the locals are good. Every now and again, I'll hit a Starbucks. It wears you out a little bit, Starbucks. But there's sometimes under pressure, I'll go to a Starbucks. But I like Gregory's.
Okay. My favorite thing about New York is that you could be anywhere and you could be doing the most outrageous thing, wearing the most outrageous outfit, and no one would care. You could do whatever you want. New York's a place that is just so accepting, and so many crazy things happen in the best way that it doesn't really matter. And you could just be yourself. What is your favorite part about New York?
I think what's always been the best thing about New York for me is, I'm not talking about outfits and things like that. You could do just about anything you want at any time you want. Mm-hmm. I know we have our cliche about the city never sleeping, but you could really do anything you want anytime you want in this city, and it's amazing.
It truly is probably the most convenient place I've ever been to.
Of all time. Of all time.
All right, well, again, thank you so much for having me in my first time on air at Retail Redux, and it was so great to learn more about you and your experiences, so thank you so much for your time. Well,
I appreciate you having me, so to speak. Next time we have to put you on camera. You're a great producer, and you're a great voice, and you have your questions, and then the questions that came in.
I don't know if my curly hair would fit in the screen, but...
Yeah, well, we can figure something out. Look, you know what we'll do? We'll bring on hair and makeup, and we'll make sure you're taken care of.
I'm good with glam. Let's bring in some glam.
That's very good. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for spending some time with us. We're going to put together this podcast, again, in a little bit of a different format. We had a lot of fun. Madeline was great, of course. Stephanie, always. Thank you for helping putting this together. And that's Retail Redux for this week. And we'll see you again real soon. NYC forever.